Welcome to the Dysregulated podcast and the special series, The Intake Interviews. I'm your host, Elliot Waters. In this feature, we dive deep into conversations with individuals who have a lived or living experience with mental illness, offering real, raw, and genuine insights into what it's like to navigate the complexities of mental ill health. The aim is to bring authentic stories to light, encourage open conversations, and create a space where we can learn from one another. This episode may include discussions of sensitive topics such as suicide, self-harm, substance use, sexual violence, domestic violence, trauma, and other mental health related issues. These conversations offer genuine insights into mental illness, but they may be distressing for some listeners. If any of these topics are triggering for you, please take care of your well-being and reach out for support if needed. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Where were we? Hello, Holly. How are you going?
I'm not too bad, Elliot. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited. Very excited. This episode has been a long time coming. We've had quite a few goes at this. So if this is going out there to everybody, we've done a really bloody good job. So it's very exciting to have you here on the show because, you know, when I first started thinking about doing these intake interviews, obviously, I thought who would be some great people who have got great stories to come on and experiences to share. And you were always the person that I thought about coming on. So it's quite surreal to have you on the show. So thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Cool. So get ready, everybody. This is going to be very insightful, of course, but I reckon inspirational as well. It's interesting, Holly, we'll get into how we know each other in a minute. I know a bit of your story, but I certainly don't know all of your story. So there's going to be moments here where I also learn a lot about you, which will be exciting, along with the listeners. So yeah, I'm really excited. This is going to be really good. So let's get stuck into it, I reckon. Now, my first question is, how did we meet and how is it that we've become friends in real life?
So it was very modern. We met on Facebook. A mum had posted in a Newcastle Community Connect group that her son was struggling with his mental health, and Elliot had commented underneath the post offering her his support for this young man who was struggling, and he also offered it to anybody else reading the comment at the time. So I thought, well, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So I reached out to Elliot and we set up a meeting and it went from there.
Now, the meeting that we set up was it was very me, but it also was significant for you too. We met at Hamilton train station, if I do remember correctly.
We did. We definitely did.
And of course, trains are a big part of just about any autistic person's life. And I'm no different. I love the trains too. But it was, as I said, significant in the sense, or as far as your story is concerned, because you'd spent a bit of time around Hamilton train station, from what I remember.
I had, yeah. So at the time when I met Elliot, I was homeless and I was riding trains, and Hamilton's one of the main intersections where different trains go up in different directions. So I did spend a lot of time around that station.
I remember being pretty nervous going into it too, because I don't know, I didn't really know anything about you at all. You could have been anybody. So it was, I think we both, and I'm sure you would have felt the same, meeting me, not having any idea of who I was, just some rando on Facebook. But I'm so glad that we both took the leap of faith and met up because, we've got a great friendship out of this, and it's awesome. It's really enriched my life, our friendship. So thank you for all that you have done. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so lucky to have you too. I really value our friendship.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, let's get into it then, because that's the introduction. That's how we met. But there's a lot more to your story than just how we met. So if you could, please, where does your story begin? How does the story of Holly start?
Yeah. So it probably starts in year 7 or year 6 when I was
12, 13 years old, I was doing a transition to high school program because they did that for kids that they thought would struggle with going into high school. And I met my best friend Jax through that group. And we connected due to our struggles at school and home and just general mental health struggles. We ended up going to different schools. He ended up moving to Queensland. So our friendship was mostly over social media. I struggled a lot at school academically and socially during this time. There was a group of girls that picked on me and just made my life a lot harder than it needed to be. I was also diagnosed with ADHD during this time, so that was another hurdle that I had to address. So during this time, I lent on Jax heavily. I talked to him about everything I was going through, and he talked to me about his life and what he was going through. And he started to fall into the wrong crowd, probably when we were probably 13. And he started to use drugs and substances. So I didn't know how to help or support him with that. I was just a kid myself with no exposure to that sort of thing. But eventually the substances were too much and Jax took his own life in 2019. So I lost him, which shattered me and my world. I internalized it. I didn't tell anyone about Jax's death apart from the people that knew him and his parents, etc. So it was just a really, really rough time. And that was probably my first exposure to the real world.
It's like any of those points that you just said, like the bullying and stuff. Speaking of the bullying, I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But that is so much for someone at such a young age to take on, and it's not unusual that you would internalize it, but that's such a heavy burden, such a heavy burden. Um, with the bullying, um, these people, do you still think about the bullying today, or is it sort of left in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about it all the time. It really impacted me. Like, I don't think people understand just how much bullying can affect a young teenager because it's during your developmental stage and you're just taking everybody else's opinions on board. And when I was being picked on for my body, for my lack of academic skill, like I just became, I thought I was worthless. I couldn't see any light. I only saw the dark comments that I was given.
Well, I reckon you're one of the smartest people I know. So this is another example of where the school system fails people like you and I. Because school, not to go too far off track, but school's very much a pursuit for people who are good students. They're the ones that get to the top, but that doesn't mean if you're not a good student that you're not smart. And so many people with ADHD struggle with school, and it's not because, our IQ is less. It's just because the tools we have to navigate the world don't mesh with school that well, but there's still so much value there. And I'm guessing it would be the same with you. Although potentially your marks maybe weren't where you quite wanted them to be. As I said, I know you and how well spoken you are, that, smarts is not an issue. So, but it is a shame to hear, although it's not surprising, that unfortunately a lot of those comments still sort of swirl around today. Um, it is very hard to sort of just keep those things in the past and move forward. But I don't know, you seem to be doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, thank you. It's like it's even the little things. Like I never got an award at any of the academic award ceremonies that we had through school and high school. It's just little things like that that even though I tried my absolute hardest most of the time, I just was never, in my eyes and in the people that were around me's eyes, I was never good enough.
Yeah, and you put expectations on yourself, and if people are giving you all this negative feedback, you can't help but take it on and go, okay, well, I need to do something to stop that negative feedback. But when you're dealing with bullies at school, in high school especially, um, the feedback can be so wrong, and I think it is in this case too. And yeah, it's just school is such a pivotal moment of time. And if you're one of the types of people who maybe are wired in a way that takes others' opinions on a little bit more than other people, it can be such a difficult time to navigate things, especially if you are a little bit different. Would you have said that you were a little bit different on the outside of things? Like if someone was looking in, that you would feel different?
Yeah, absolutely. I never felt like I fitted in during school. I always felt like I was the oddball and that nobody understood me, not even my parents or any close friends that I had. The only friend that understood me was Jackson. Yeah, yeah.
So, just the last point about school. If you know who these girls are, give me a list. I'm going to buy a carton of eggs and I'm going to go egging people's houses. All right. No one rips on my friend Holly without copping it from me. Um, but yeah, so it must have been 15. Like, it's that age. 15 is so huge, so significant. And to have an event so significant, such as Jack's taking his own life, it's as you said, it shattered your world, but it's amazing that you are able to keep pushing forward. And that's, I guess, the question I want to ask, because this to me is a great example of the enduring human spirit. How did you get up every day and keep putting your best foot forward, even though there was all this burden that you were carrying? How were you able to carry that burden at such a young age? Because it is nothing short of inspiring, let me tell you.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't cope at the start. So when he first took his own life, I completely shut down. I stopped going to school. I stopped engaging in the sport that I was playing at the time. I just literally didn't leave my room, and my parents didn't know what to do with me. So, but then eventually I had this cricket camp coming up that the cricket was the sport that I played, and I just had to go to that. So that was what I started to focus on instead of the grief that I was in and the really dark place that I was in. I started to focus on this camp because it was a really important camp. And that was how I got through that time, by focusing on that.
So I guess that's sort of a um, correct me if I'm wrong, but a bit like a meaning and purpose sort of thing, something to
Yeah.
aim at, something to galvanize your approach to living and really push forward towards that point. I think that's a huge part of this human spirit idea is something I want to investigate more. But it seems to me that this whole meaning and purpose idea constructs very much an integral part of being able to keep that spirit moving on. And it sounds like it happened there with you too. Thank goodness for cricket. Great
Yeah.
sport, by the way, cricket. Great sport. I was hopeless at it, but actually you were pretty good at cricket. Like you didn't just go on a camp here and do a little game there. How good at cricket were you? And are you still playing today?
I represented New South Wales for a couple of years, and then I got selected in the Australian under 16 side.
Holy
So
dooly.
I went all right. I was a pretty strong athlete from 14 to 16, and I've signed up this season, but I'm yet to play a game.
You're are you you're a bowler, right?
Yeah,
Yep. What type of bowling? Are you a spinner or are you a fast bowler?
I was a fast bowler.
Yeah, you'd knock my middle stump out very easily, I'm sure. Um, so cricket, I guess it's similar again to my story in the sense that athletics and running, I feel protected me a lot from some of those really negative cognitions and thoughts and emotions. And it sounds like cricket played the same purpose for you too.
Yeah, definitely.
So you played for Australia, New South Wales. That's crazy. When you do play again, which hopefully will be soon, I'm going to come watch because I love watching people who are just good at what they do, just experts. And if you're playing for Australia, fair income, that's huge. It's like you're the celebrity here. This is great. Um, so so what about work? Of course, sport's one thing, but as we get older through our teenage years, eventually, unfortunately, we have to get a job. How did that all go for you, all things considered?
Yeah, so I moved out at home at 16. I didn't cope in my parents' home, so I just felt like I needed to get out and start finding out what I was good at and how to live my life, really. So my first job was sports coaching, so cricket coaching at my coach's shed, he calls it. So that was my first job.
So, so hang on. You moved out when you were 16.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's so huge. I would never have done that. I would have been way too scared. Well, I'm going to ask a silly question, but I am curious. Were you nervous moving out, or were you just like, nah, this is what needs to happen and let's do it?
No, I wasn't nervous. I was at my end with my parents' place. I just needed to get out. So I was very excited to start my new life in Newcastle, where I moved to.
So working as a sports coach, which was my dream. It used to be my dream to do that, but I was never good enough at anything to do it. Um, but you then changed jobs to, was it support work? Which would make sense because the
Yeah.
Holly I know is so unbelievably empathetic and compassionate that support work to me sounds like a match made in heaven. How's support work gone for you?
Yeah, so I got my license after coming out of the sports coaching and therefore had a car so I could drive around. So I moved into support work and did a traineeship there. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It honestly was so good for me. I feel like I had a purpose again. And I loved it. It was such a good job.
But it wasn't too far after this that things started to go a bit south. Is that right? It's around this time that I guess obviously they've already had all these things happen to you in your formative years, which you're carrying around with you every day, which again I think is so inspiring that you're able to push through. But then things took a turn for the worse, didn't they?
Yeah. I started to have some symptoms of something that I didn't really understand. So I was at a cricket comp that was a selection tournament into the New South Wales side, which I was really hoping to get into, and I wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, was barely functioning and plus all the stress of this selection that I was putting on myself. All of this caused my first psychotic break. So I was in the middle of a game out in Tamworth where it was 35 degrees every day, and I started to get this paranoia and visual and auditory hallucinations of people watching me. I thought that there were spies watching me, and I was having voices telling me to do things. And I didn't understand what was happening to me. So I pretty much collapsed in the middle of the field during my bowling spell and was taken off the field and treated for heat stroke, which is what they thought it was. And yeah, that was a huge moment in my life. It was the start of something a lot bigger, I think.
So when that happens, did you tell anybody about the voices and that sort of paranoia, or were you so not aware or in touch of things that you weren't sure what was going on, and it was later that you could reflect and say, okay, that's what was happening?
Yes. So at the time I was in complete denial of what had happened. I didn't process it, just completely tried to ignore it, pretend it didn't happen and move on because it was one of the scariest moments that I've ever faced. Yeah, and I didn't reach out for any support. I didn't know what was happening to me. I just ruminated on it for months and was trying to make sense of it in my own mind, but just couldn't.
So when it happened, did you know what was happening was not reality, or to you in that moment it was real as anything is? People were watching, people were spying, and there was no, I don't want to say input of logic, but was your reality completely changed and you were in that psychotic episode and that was as real gets?
Yeah, it was real to me at the time. It was real, and then afterwards, trying to process it, my logical part of my brain was like, "No, you just made that up. You imagined it." But it happened, and it was unbelievably scary, and I was in complete denial that it had happened.
Well, you're very anxious moving forward that an episode like this might happen again.
Yes, absolutely. I lived in fear for 4 or 5 months before it did happen again. Yeah.
So when it happened again, were there similar circumstances around it or was it a bit different?
No, it was just I was at work and it started to happen again, and then it would happen while I was at home. It was just random, sporadic episodes, I guess. And yeah, I sought out a psychologist to try and help me navigate it because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know who to talk to. I felt like I couldn't go to my parents. I couldn't go to my friends. I couldn't go to anyone. So I just wanted to talk to a stranger who I thought would help me at the time. And it took me about 2 months to actually tell her why I was coming to therapy.
So when you're ruminating about the um, psychotic episodes, will it happen again? What does it mean? What the hell is going on? Um, were you also at this point, would you have said that you were depressed at this point and ruminating about other things as well?
Yeah, I was very low. After this episode, I went into a really dark depression and it just got worse and worse. And I was trying to go to this psychologist and open up, but it just was not working. And I just got deeper and deeper into this depression with the psychotic symptoms.
So you found it hard to open up to the psychologist. I'm assuming that's a trust thing, or is it also you weren't really sure what to say because you weren't really sure what was going on?
Yeah, a bit of both. It was definitely a bit of both. I had a lot of trust issues with her, but she broke down eventually. But yeah, and I also was in complete denial that it was happening at the same time.
How long did you see her for?
About a year, I think.
And would you say the psychology interventions helped much with what you were going through?
They didn't help with the psychotic symptoms. We tried grounding, we tried meditation, we tried talking to them, we tried all sorts of things to try and help with that, but nothing worked. But with the grief around Jax, she definitely helped with that, and then the depression and just like the more life events that I'd had, she was really good at helping me with. But the psychotic stuff, unfortunately, was just not in her power to help me with.
Yeah, that's what I sort of was assuming because now I've had psychotic breaks, but I've never had a full psychotic episode. Touch wood. But as far as I'm aware from reading the literature and knowing people who have gone through similar circumstances, psychosis seems to be really, it's a medication problem. Not so much
Yeah.
that the medication's the problem, but it's medications that can provide the fix. Psychological interventions, not so much. But as you said there, you said that perfectly about the life events. That is exactly where the psychology I would have expected would come in and help. And it sounds like it did, which is really good because I don't know. I'm just thinking, I'm trying to put myself into your shoes. I'm just imagining this burden that you must have been carrying around. It must have been so tired. Like, were you really tired and fatigued all the time as well? Because you're carrying a lot.
Absolutely. I was exhausted. I just couldn't, I was struggling to function. It was honestly horrific.
So then the psychotic depression really set in. Did it become more frequent these episodes, or were they completely random? It was like how was the frequency and actually, that's a question I didn't ask. What sort of duration of these episodes? How long did they go for? Was it like an hour? Was it a week? If you could really, yeah, share some information around that, that would be so cool because yeah, psychosis is so complex, but you are able to, bring to the conversation such clarity around what has happened. And it's just, again, it's great. It's really great. And I'm privileged and honored to have you on. So yeah, if you could just tell me a little bit more about the psychosis and what it's actually like. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so my first episode probably only went for about half an hour because just assuming that it was heat stroke, like all the coaches and people that were looking after me. And then I kind of came out of this dissociative psychotic phase. But then when it started to happen again, 4 or 5 months down the track, mostly I was hearing voices, and they would only last an hour. Sometimes it was literally all day. I couldn't fall asleep because people were talking to me. It was horrific, and it was very varied. There was no pattern. The psychologist tried to distinguish a pattern in when they were coming so we could try and tackle them better. But it was random and there was no warning signs or anything. Sometimes they were there, sometimes they weren't. Yeah.
Were the voices voices of people you knew, or was it completely random?
No, the best I can describe it is like young men, like maybe their voices have broken in the last 2 or 3 years. Like, just that was the best way I can describe it.
Do you think there's any? Have you uncovered any significance of that? Do you think that's linked to something, or you're not sure?
I'm not 100% sure. From what I've been told by doctors, it can be completely random or it can be someone, just psychosis is so individualized and it's different for everyone. So, yeah, because I don't have any trauma around young men or anything. So there's no reason to think that that's why.
Yeah, okay, as I said, as someone like many of the listeners listening right now, who hasn't had psychosis, that is just it's unbelievable insight, and it must have been so difficult and scary. You must have been so anxious, wondering if the next episode was about to begin. That's just, yeah. How long's it been since you've had a psychotic episode?
Probably a year. Yeah.
And do they, over the course of the years that this has happened, were there varying strengths? Like I know we spoke about duration, half an hour, all day. Were some stronger than others, and at all, did you understand in the moment that what was going on wasn't real? Was that ever understood in the moment, or was that always after?
So with the voices, I could sometimes tell that they weren't real because I'd be looking around and there's no one there, and you use your phone to try and take a picture and see if anyone's there if you're too scared to. So that was my coping strategy. Yeah, and then other times when I have strong delusions, like grandiose delusions that I had later on, like I had what my reality that I was experiencing was completely real to me at the time.
That's amazing. And you took photos just to prove that there was no one there. That's wow. That's yeah, it blows my mind. It really does. Now, so you're going to therapy, as we said, which worked for some things but didn't work for others. But there was one particular therapy session where things didn't go very well. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I had reached a point that day where the voices were telling me to take my own life, and I was just unable to cope. I honestly 100% believed that I needed to, so I went to this therapy session and told the psychologist this and just said, I need something to hold on to. You have to fix this, you have to make them stop, or I just can't do this anymore. So we tried some grounding techniques, we tried some meditation, and none of it was working. And eventually without telling her, I just went, I can't do this anymore. And I walked out. So I got in my car and I drove to a bridge that was nearby and parked my car underneath the bridge, walked up the steps. There's a path in the middle of the bridge, so walked along that for probably 40 minutes debating what I was going to do. And then I eventually climbed over the railings of that path and over the side of the bridge, and I was probably only there for 5 or 10 minutes, trying to egg myself off to let go and do what the voices wanted me to do. But this kid started yelling at me from the middle of the bridge on the path and telling me that it was going to be okay and that he was going to be there for me and that the police were on their way and that it was going to be okay. And he eventually climbed over the railings and joined me on the side of the road over the bridge, trying to hold on to me, trying not to let me go until the police came. And the police had to get police rescue to come and ropes and pull me back over the side of the bridge because I refused to come back over. And yeah, I was taken. The cops were lovely. The police were so lovely. They told me I wasn't in trouble and that I was going to get some help that I needed. And honestly, as much as I was angry that I couldn't go through with my plan, They saved my life that day, and I'm really appreciative of it now. So they packed me in a cop car and took me down to the bottom of the bridge where they waited for an ambulance. And the ambulance took me to hospital where I was for about 2 weeks.
So I'm just trying to, it's just, yeah, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. Um, that kid that, like, what a lifesaver. What are the chances? Like, that's unbelievable. Do you still talk to him today?
Yeah, we are friends today. He got my number after I went into hospital and had texted me when I got out. Yeah.
What a hero. What an absolute hero. That's unbelievable. See, it's stories like that where, you know, I don't know, for people who have a bit of a negative, depressive disposition, like like a lot of us do, and look at the world in a negative light, a story like that is just that's the brightest light that I can think of. That is unbelievable. And the fact that you still talk today, I think is really, really, really great. It's really, that's the core of like humanity, looking out for each other and those really emotional moments. And just it's unbelievable. And yeah, so yeah, that's what a great friendship that is. That's someone who's rock solid, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's been really good. Really, really lucky to have him.
So with okay, so I just want to get a picture of when you were walking up the bridge and to climb over the edge. Now, in my experience with suicidal ideation and then thinking of a plan and then going to carry it out, I remember every step that I used to take when I was, so I used to have this to and fro, the side saying, we've done enough, we can't do any more, it's time to go. Then there's the other side that's saying, no, don't be silly, plan to live for, all that sort of stuff, the light and the dark, you could say. But I still remember specifically how, I don't know, how heavy the moment felt, and every step just was like, like just huge significance and this weight. Is that what it felt like for you, or was it a bit different?
No, it definitely felt like that. It was very heavy. I felt so weighed down, like I had no other option. Like the voices were telling me that it was absolutely like I had to die to save humanity, basically. That's what they were telling me. And it was so heavy. I just couldn't. It honestly felt like my brain had been hit by a bus. Like I just couldn't
Mhm.
think at all. I just wanted it to end.
So why do you think you didn't end it in the end? Was there this other thought that was coming through saying no, keep keep going, or was there this little flicker of hope? This is what it felt like for me anyway. This little flicker of hope, that that little flame was still burning, still there. Was it something like that to hold on to, or what do you think it was that yeah stopped you from going through with it?
My dog. I love my dog, Coda. She is my best friend and everything. And the thought of never seeing her again it was awful. I just couldn't. That was what I had to hold on to. So that's who I held on to. And she's my rock, my world. Yeah.
Amazing. How is she going? She had a good day today?
Yeah. She's at a walk. She's happy.
Oh, very good, very good. See, exercise, it's good for everybody, exercise.
Yeah.
So the police and was it the police or the ambulance that took you to hospital?
The ambulance took me, but the police followed.
Yep. So the police were really good, you said, which is great. And in my experience, um, police have been really good too. So that is good to hear, because in those moments, I don't know, like just the littlest comment or the littlest, just negative sort of perception can cause such a ripple effect, psychologically, I suppose, in that moment. The police, unfortunately, have to confront things like this quite a bit. But it's really, I don't know, there's something about the police in uniform, for me it was anyway, police, that they brought with themselves all this, like the credentials, the significance, and you listen to the police, and it's just so good to hear that your experience with them was was great, which it was for me too. So Go the police as well there. So big ups there as well. Um, so when you got taken to the hospital, don't tell me it was the Mater Hospital, please.
It definitely was.
Oh yeah, great memories there, great memories. So which ward were you in? Were you in Newcastle or Lake Macquarie?
I was in Lake Macquarie ward.
Uh, and how long were you in there for?
About 2 weeks.
So that two, so just to backtrack slightly, um, you weren't on any medication at this point, were you?
No.
Okay. So I'm assuming if you were in for 2 weeks, they put you on some medications. Do you remember what they were and did they help?
Yeah, they did. They put me on an antidepressant in the last couple of days that I was there. I'm pretty sure it was fluoxetine for those that want to know the details.
Prozac, the original. Yeah.
Yeah. And that at the time I was like, this is gonna help me, like I'm gonna be get better and gonna be okay. But yeah, little did I know it was the start of a downward spiral.
So what was the 2 weeks like for the listeners who are fortunate enough not to have spent time in a psychiatric ward? Were you bored? Were you people watching? Were you hearing other people's stories, keeping to yourself? What were the nurses like? Were the doctors helpful? Yeah. What was it? What was your experience like at the Mater Hospital?
So at the start I was still very, very, very low and didn't I just wanted to get out so I could try again. So I wasn't transparent with the doctors or the nurses. I just wanted to get out of there. But I think they saw through that to an extent and they kept me there for the 2 weeks. I was honestly petrified most of the time because I was in an adult ward when I'd freshly turned 18 and there were people triple my age there having like psychotic episodes during the controlled setting. So it was awful. It was honestly one of the worst 2 weeks of my life, but it did save my life in the end.
Yeah, did you feel like, I'm just trying to think back to when I first went, did you feel like an outsider or did you feel like you belonged with everybody?
Uh, that's a great question. I probably did feel like an outsider just because I was so young and everybody else in there was so old. But actually talking to some of the patients, and I have a couple of friendships out of it that I still talk to today, they were very reassuring and helps me feel comfortable, I guess.
So who was looking after your puppy dog while you're in hospital?
The RSPCA fed her every day. So that was a huge process to go through. I had to sign so many documents. It was ridiculous just to get them to go and feed my poor dog who was stuck at home while I was there for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously it all went well, which is good. But what else happened? Didn't there was something again, shattering happened during your stay at the Mater, I think I believe.
So my car
Right?
had been left at Stockton Bridge and yeah, it was stolen while I was in there, which was just a slap in the face. But yeah.
Yeah. Like yeah, I don't mean shattering as in like, losing a friend, but at the same time, like, I don't
It was
know.
my
I don't
first
know
car,
about
so
I don't know about you, but I really love my car. And my car got stolen um a couple of years ago. And I remember that rocked me. It was terrible. All of a sudden my ability to go anywhere and be independent was sort of gone. But as you said, the biggest part I imagine, there's that functional side to it, like how am I going to get places? But it's the slap in the face. Like, did you think that life just, I don't know, think that life was just against you and it was like a cruel game? Like, did you start to feel bitter and jaded towards life itself?
yeah. So that was my first car, which I had an attachment to it. It was very special to me. And to have it stolen while you're in a mental hospital was a massive slap in the face. I just couldn't. I was angry and bitter and just so unhappy with the world.
Which from where I stand, I'd say fair enough. Like, come on, give poor Holly a break, fair income. Um, Yeah, my car was never stolen when I was in hospital, but I was given parking fines. So I came out of the Mater one of the stays I had there, and found out I owed the Newcastle City Council a couple of $100 in parking fines, which I did contest, and some of them I got out of, but not all of them. So okay, now this is where it starts to get, well, it's all interesting, but to me, this is where it starts to get really interesting as far as the medication goes. So antidepressants are really good for people, or generally can be really good for people with depression, anxiety, but there's other conditions where antidepressants can actually make things worse. So what happened next that's linked to the antidepressant, and what did that reveal?
So I was probably on it for 2-3 weeks, and it triggered my first manic episode. So it started off quite small. So I was working an awful lot, feeling really good, really energized, really on top of it. And at this point, I was just like, the antidepressant's working. Like, this is how I'm supposed to feel. So I worked a lot and like was out all night driving around in the work car that I'd been given because my car had been stolen. And yeah, so and then it progressed. So it went from just having lots of energy and going out at night and having fun to leaving my housing to live on the street and in my work car that I was using. I lived out of a storage unit, so packed everything out of this housing that I had, put it in a storage unit and lived out of that. Did a lot of driving around in this work car that I had till I had to give it back, where I quit my job and was homeless on the street, running around with not much money and a dog with me. So I came in and out of psychosis during this time. So I had what we call grandiose delusions and voices, and paranoia, where I thought I was being followed and my parents were out to get me, etc. So it just kind of progressed and progressed, and I came in and out of psychosis and in and out of the mania. So I had low points where I would go and see the psychologist that I had, and then I'd swing back to being high and living on the street and enjoying myself. And yeah, that went on for a few months, really, probably 2, 3, 4 months of that.
A real roller coaster.
Yeah.
That is dysregulation of emotions right there. That's the very definition. So just for the people that might not know, and I'm not sure how you've experienced this, but with your emotional dysregulation during this time, did you have many? So you had your low moments, and then you'd swing to your high moments, and things are good or felt good anyway. Did you have much time spent sort of, I don't want to say normal, but no, baseline, that's a better way to put it. Did you just swing from one extreme to the other, or did you spend some time, there was some clarity and some time at baseline, or what was that like?
No, so for those 4 to 6 months, I swung back and forth between being manic and being depressed. So there was no baseline. It was just one or the other. And it was very intense. Looking back, I don't know how I coped, because it was just like 1 minute you're there planning a future, like ready to do anything, feeling like you're invincible, and the next you want to take your own life. It's just like, it's insane.
Were you seeing doctors at this point?
No, so I've been discharged with pretty much no support through the hospital, and just,
Typical.
yeah, was left to my own devices for 6 months, really.
Yeah, I don't know, the Australian mental health care system needs a big overhaul, because that is a story. Well, I was very much the same, but there's plenty of stories of the same sort of thing happening. People just being turfed out and like, all right, you seem semi-stable, good luck to you. Like, it's terrible. But anyway, that's a discussion for another time. Um, so it would have been very hard for so when was it that you did see a doctor and get a diagnosis? Because this is going up and down, up and down, up and down. Was there a point where you thought, okay, I need to see someone because this can't be right? Or what was your headspace like at that point?
No, so I was just seeing the psychologist, and I only went when I was like deep in depression. So she just saw the depression, and like her opinion without being a doctor was that it was psychotic depression, which is usually quite easy to treat, and that it goes away when you treat the depression. So that was what she was seeing at the time. But no, I didn't see any psychiatrists or doctors until after I'd had quite a big episode.
Yeah, so we're going to get to that big episode shortly. And it would be hard for mental health. I don't want to spoil the diagnosis here, but um, the up and downs sort of, I suppose, give it away. It's very hard though when you've got a person, an individual that's having these ups and downs, because if you're feeling up and everything's great and everything's happy, you're not going to the doctors or the psychologist, because why would you? Everything's going great, even though your perspective may be clouded and things actually aren't going that well at all. But if you feel like things are going great, why on earth would you go see somebody? So it is hard for mental health professionals in that sense, because they only ever see the negative side. So they're not seeing this other manic side. And this is why certain diagnoses that we'll get to in a minute can take a very long time to be picked up, because even well, you tell me, but in my experience, it took a long time for me to figure out that the real highs were too high. And it's like, no, we're running too hot here. This actually isn't healthy either. It's just at the other end of the scale. Did it take a while for you to sort of understand that there were these ups and downs, and that maybe the ups, as good as they felt, maybe weren't in your best interest?
I was in complete denial, if I'm totally honest, that anything was wrong. I just was doing whatever I felt like, whenever I felt like it. So, but yeah, probably in the back of my mind, I did know that something was wrong. That's why I went and saw the psychologist, but I never opened up enough for her to know what was going on.
Okay, so you're swirling around in life, being pulled from post to post, up and down, not quite sure what's going on. Um, and then there was this big episode, which I don't know much about the big episode, so I'm going to be listening very intently to this part, although of course I'm listening to all of it. This is amazing. But there was, yeah, would you call this the big turning point, or were there a few turning points? And what was this turning point?
No, this was definitely the big turning point. So I'd swung back to mania, and I was walking around. I'd probably been manic for like maybe a week before this had happened. And then I was walking around Katara, for those in Newcastle, and I just had this idea, like, I'm going to start a new life in the UK. Let's do it right now. So I went into a travel agency half an hour later and booked a ticket to the UK, packed only a backpack, and got on a plane the same day.
The same day?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting, but yep.
Okay.
Cool. As I said before, everybody, I haven't really heard this before. So anyway, I'll keep quiet. Sorry. Please continue.
So I spent about $8,000 on this plane ticket, which was pretty much all the money that I had. And I left my dog behind, which shows how unwell I was at the time. I really didn't think of anyone other than myself at the time. So I get through customs and security and everything, like buzzing, like really happy, just talking to anyone and everyone. Get on the plane, have a middle seat because it was a last minute flight. Talked to everybody on the plane, just telling them about how I was going to start a new life and how it was all going to be great. I walked up and down and around the plane. Just the flight attendants were so annoyed at me. I feel so embarrassed now the way that I acted. But yeah, so eventually I landed in Heathrow, London, and ran around the streets of London for. I have amnesia around this event. So it was probably about 1, 2, 3 days, something along those lines, before the police picked me up at a train station and were like, "What are you doing? Where are you going? Do you need any help?" And I'd come out of the mania at this point and was deep in depression again. And they were like, "Did you come to meet someone? Like, what was your plan?" And I had to tell the police that I had no plan, that I didn't understand what I was doing here, and that I needed help. So thankfully, I have family in the UK, and they put me on a train with a special ticket, so I didn't have to pay to go to my aunt's. And yeah, my aunt took care of me. I was in a terrible state when I got to her, just in shock and couldn't believe what I had done. But she looked after me.
Thank goodness for that. That's wow. Running around London, manic. That's like it could have ended a lot worse. Like London's, London, big city. There's a lot of people, and there's people that don't have good intentions. Did you come across any issues with any of the locals, or was it all okay as far as that was concerned?
I don't really remember a lot of it, but I think it was all okay because I just hung out in anywhere that was open in like the nighttime when it was dark, or I just walked around. So I didn't see anything sketchy, but maybe I was in a better part of London. I don't know. I don't know the UK very well.
And that's the thing. The distinction needs to be made that you know anyone going to the UK for a holiday, you're going to be excited. You're going to be excited. Oh, big plane. You know. Um, when I went over there, I was exciting and everything like that. But as you're describing it, it's that next level. It's the constantly walking around the plane, and you want to talk and meet people. That's part of traveling. But your constant chatter and everything was just dialed up to 11 by the sounds of it. So I just want that distinction to be made that it's like feeling good about going on. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it would have been like feeling good going on a holiday, but dialed up all the way over the top.
Yeah, it was just everything else was it was just dialed up the whole way. Like everything was 120%. Yeah.
And at any point, did you? Well, let me reframe that. Um, when the depression hit, like, was it a gradual um release from the manic episode into the depressive episode, or was it like instantaneous? Boom, flick the switch. Now we're in depressed mode. How did that work?
Yeah, it was literally a flip the switch. Like 1 minute I was like, "Oh, I'm going to get a train to Manchester or wherever I was going." And then all of a sudden I was like, "What am I doing here? I'm freezing. How, like, it was the middle of winter for them. How am I going to get home? Where is my home? Where's my dog?" Like, it just hit me all at once. And I think the police saw the absolute panic on my face and tried to help, and did help immensely.
Yeah, which is very lucky, and thank goodness for your family as well, who, by the sounds of it, were very understanding and did as much they could for your well-being. That's really good. Did you ever were you admitted into a hospital while over there, or or did you just, as soon as you were able, get on the plane, come back to Australia, and then what happened?
No, so my aunt just took care of me and made sure I was okay, and then we just kind of came up with a plan of how to get back to Australia. So that was kind of what happened.
Were you on any depressants at this point as well?
No, I'd gone off them a while ago.
Ah, right. But the manic episode still came on. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that's there you go. So once you get back to Australia, so a bit of my own story, but very quickly, when I went to the UK, which I haven't spoken much about on this podcast, but I really need to. Thank you for reminding me. But I didn't have a manic episode over there. I had a hypermanic episode. And I will explain the difference between mania and hypermania in future episodes. But generally speaking, mania is like the next level from hypermania. But hypermania has a lot of the similar features as well, like being impulsive and, lots of energy, not needing sleep, all that sort of stuff that you described too, but without psychotic features. Um, but I remember when I got back to Australia, within 2 hours, I was already back to my GP's and looking at getting back on a medication once I got back into Newcastle. When you got back to Newcastle, was it a similar thing for you?
Yeah, so I was seen by doctors the next day when I got home, and they helped me get housing and everything as well. So I got some emergency housing. But yeah, they put me on medication pretty much as soon as I got back. Yeah.
It was antipsychotics this time, though, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Finally. But as I said, it is very hard to pick up these things. Did you get had you had any more diagnoses at this point, or is it still just the ADHD?
It was just the ADHD, and then so they'd said that they needed to monitor and kind of see how I go on the medication before they like found a diagnosis for me. So they talked to me about what it could be and like what I can do to try and manage what my symptoms rather than the actual diagnosis. So yeah, they kept me in the system for a while before they diagnosed me.
And then what was it that they diagnosed you with?
Bipolar disorder.
There it is, bipolar disorder. I'm sure a lot of you guys listening would be thinking, yes, it's got to be bipolar disorder. But because you had the psychotic features, you were diagnosed type 1, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so type 1 is you could say, I guess, well, type 1 and 2 are both severe, but type 1 does have that psychotic element to it, which type 2 doesn't. So, for example, I have type 2 bipolar. So type 2, you have the hypomania, but type 1, you can get into the full-blown mania, but both have very severe depressions. When they gave you this diagnosis, what medications did they put you on to wrestle your mood back under control?
So they put me on lithium and olanzapine were my two medications, and I have a couple other side ones, but those two are the main ones that honestly changed my life. I would absolutely not be here today without the medications.
And that's interesting because, even I on this podcast have rubbish medications many, many times, but I did an episode a little while ago about medication miracle that I saw when I was in a psych ward. And it was olanzapine was the same medication that this individual took and that completely turned him around. And it is important to note because medications do get a bad rap, but especially for disorders like bipolar, bipolar is, like I sort of said earlier, we discussed earlier, some things are more in the psychological sort of realm and other things are in more, I guess, the neurochemical sort of realm. And bipolar type 1 in particular is very much about neurotransmitters and medications are the key. So an antipsychotic like olanzapine and a mood stabilizer like lithium, very, very common choices. But for you, because your, I guess, condition is so well defined, it sort of makes sense that those two medications would really, really turn things around because, yeah, there's no two ways about it. You had, or still have, severe type 1 bipolar disorder, and those medications are a great way to wrestle it under control. So did you do much psychology work in conjunction with the medications, like around routines and habits and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I started seeing a psychologist at the same place that I've been seeing all my doctors and nurses and everything. And at first we really worked on like figuring out what my diagnosis was because I started seeing him before we figured it out. And he was very big on let's get diagnosed so you can get the right help. So we did a lot of that. And then there was accepting the diagnosis and like learning to live with it and learning coping strategies. And then now it's more about learning how to live at a baseline that's not mania, because I think like Elliot said earlier, like once you get that high like you do with a drug, that becomes your new baseline. So that in your head, it becomes your new baseline. So now that I'm at a normal baseline, I'm constantly searching for that high and not finding it. So, but that's what we're working on at the moment.
Yep, and that's a problem that I have as well. I feel you on that one, that's for sure. So let me think. What was I going to say? See, come on, Elliot. Oh, I got lost there. Look, that's the thing. Your story and the way you're telling it is so vivid. Like I'm losing my place because I am imagining that I'm you in this moment as you're describing it to me. You're a very good storyteller. And thankfully, this is a story that that I think is going to have a very, very happy ending. Um, but what I was going to say was, so when you got diagnosed, what was that moment like? Did you accept the diagnosis and it was like, oh, finally, it's all explained. Now I understand there's this framework that my behaviors fit in and this is the reason why? Or did you fight it and were like, nah, I refuse to believe that. I'm not having the bar of it. Doesn't feel right to me. How did you feel and react to being told that you had type 1 bipolar?
Yeah, so originally I was very against a label. It's like I don't want to be labeled because that's on my records and then it will stop me doing stuff and everybody's going to know all my secrets. Kind of a paranoid denial and just against labels. But then I actually sat down and thought about it with my psychologist and he was like, it'll help you get the right care and it'll explain your behavior and you won't feel so guilty about the things that you did while you're in psychosis and mania. So I was very accepting of it once they did give it to me, but it took a while for me to accept it. It explained everything, which was helpful. So before the private psychologist I'd been seeing, she had told me that it's possible that the psychosis was out of trauma and that if it was, that requires a lot of work to try and fix. So I was glad that it wasn't that and it was a chemical imbalance that I could fix with medication and the right therapy rather than something trauma-based that would take years to perfect. Because at the time I was like, I cannot live the way that I'm living anymore. But yes, the light at the end of the tunnel was the medications for me. They saved my life.
So did you have housing at this point or were you back on the
Yes.
streets again?
They helped me get in between housing as soon as I got back from the UK. And then they helped me get a private rental through a program called Rent Choice Youth, which helps subsidise rent for young people that are struggling or homeless. So thankfully got on that program and got a rental that I could have with my dog. Yeah.
Yeah. So how was your puppy dog when you came back?
She was very happy. She was also very well looked after. So I'm so grateful for the RSPCA who found a breeder who would take her. So very grateful for them. And she was, very excited when I came back, which was lovely. It's nice to feel loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Non-judgmental. See, my therapy pet, and I've spoken about Mabel on this podcast before, is a cat, and she's not very empathetic or compassionate. But I've met your puppy dog, and I tell you, the pure joy that radiates from her, it's just you can't help but smile. It's amazing. So, yeah, that's it's cool, and it goes to show how important. And you already mentioned it earlier, towards the start of the um episode, how important she was to you, and you know, in many ways, she's kept you alive, and yeah, it's huge. And like I said, happiest dog I reckon I've ever met. She's beautiful. Um, just before we get to the next steps and what the future is hopefully looking like, I want to backtrack just a little bit, just to what it was like living on the street and sleeping on trains. What was that like? How did it feel psychologically? Did you just, you know, if you could just explain that, that'd be, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so I was very much manic when I first became homeless. So at the time it was fun and an interesting and constantly stimulated, just always being on your toes, never knowing where you're going to be next or what you're going to do. But then when I was in the depressed mood, it was awful, honestly, having to look over your shoulder, just trying to get by, sleeping on trains, the police kicking you off because you haven't paid. It's awful. And it's I did so much walking. I just walked and walked and walked and walked all around Newcastle. Got the train to Sydney, walked around Sydney, just did lots of walking in the nighttime because I was too afraid to try and find somewhere to sleep because someone would steal my stuff that I had. So it was very much fight or flight all the time, even when I was manic and depressed. It's the same feeling. It's just constant fight or flight, and it's just the different moods that I was in. Where manic, I was enjoying what I was doing, and depressed, I was hating it. So, but it's the same response as the fight or flight that I was going through.
So even with sleep, like I'm just thinking from like a functionality sort of point of view, how did you manage to get sleep? Because the anxiety, as you said, was you're in fight or flight constantly, and not wanting to sleep during the night because people can take your stuff. How did you navigate that? Were you just operating off very little sleep, or did you have opportunities during the day? Yeah, how did that all go?
Yeah, so when I was manic, I didn't really sleep at all. I just walked around and didn't feel the need for sleep. But when I was low, then I would sleep usually during the day because I felt like it was a bit safer. There's more people around, like it's okay. And then I would walk at night. So that was kind of the routine that I had. So I'd ride trains or be in my car at night. So depending how hot it was at the time, because the train's air conditioned. So yeah, that was it.
Um, what about other like fundamentals, I guess, of living? For example, like food. Were you able to get food and drink when needed, or how did that go?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of churches and organizations that'll do free meals or like low cost groceries or like big bags of food or like food that's slightly out of date that you can get for free. So there's lots of services that you can utilize, which I got help with from Samaritans who were helping me at the time. So they helped me with food. And then there were also things like Oz Harvest, which is a truck that has fresh fruit and veg and different bread and that sort of thing that you can get food off of. But yeah, I got very resourceful, like working the system, trying to get all the food that I need. But yeah, I did go hungry sometimes when I had no money and nowhere was open.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. So, as I said at the start, I'm saying it again, such an inspiration, and it must have been so difficult, so difficult. And again, I just think the human spirit, your strength of character to keep pushing, keep going, it's unbelievable. Um, now, um, one of the things you told me when we first met, and it broke my heart, was that you used to try and look more like a boy to stay safe.
Yeah, I did. I dressed in black hoodies, cargo pants, like chunkier men's shoes, just trying to look more masculine because it just women on trains at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's just not safe. Whereas if you're a man, no one messes with you as much. Well, at least that was my thinking. So yeah, that was a coping strategy that I came up with while I was in that situation.
Were there other coping strategies that you had to come up with to ensure that, you could go the next day and the day after that?
It was mostly focusing on my dog. That was my main coping strategy, like getting her back. The idea of going into a new rental, like fresh, like being able to furnish it and everything. Like I had these little fantasies in my head that I would hold on to when things got tough. Like, or I'd work around furniture shops, imagining having all the furniture in this new house that I was going to have. Like, so I tried to fantasize a lot, try and make up situations that were appealing to me to try and keep going.
So what was your puppy dog up to when you're on the train? Did she come on the trains with you, or?
No, so when I first rode trains, I left her in the car, and then when it got really hot, I ended up having her taken by the RSPCA to a breeder who looked after her for a few months while I got my things together.
Right. See, it's just those sorts of insights. Yeah, I'm sure the listeners are in awe, like I am, because like it's part of my story is not what you've just mentioned. All that there is insight that I'm so honored and privileged to hear about those experiences that you had, which must have been so difficult. But like I keep sort of saying, your strength of character, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. You have put up with life being so difficult so often in so many different ways. And yet you're one of the happiest, most positive people that I know. You're much happier and positive than me. Like I'm always moping around, but you bring with you this energy. And this is one of the reasons I think um we get along, or why I like you so much, is because you bring this positive energy. And anyone who's listening to this could go, you could be forgiven if you brought some negative energy every now and then, because it's like, all right, fair enough, that makes sense. But you don't. And it's just, I don't know, people like you just, you're unbelievable. And it's so good to be able to get your story out there, because it deserves to be heard by people, because you're nothing short of a hero in my eyes. So, again, thank you for coming on. Um, but of course, the next step. So as we talk now, all that has gone before, but now we're looking forwards. What does forwards look like, and what's the plan?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me on the show and having me as a friend. I really, really value our friendship and love you to bits, mate. So thank you for that. So my next steps are to try and maintain the job that I have. Try and keep up with my exercise and like cooking, cleaning, try maintaining domestic chores and everything. Maintaining the relationship with my dog, and I have a cat as well, so looking after him. Yeah, those are the main things, I guess, and things that I'm working on. I'm working on trying to be okay with my baseline not being mania. So trying to find ways to get that dopamine rush and that adrenaline rush that I crave from the mania through healthy things like trying something new or exercising, that sort of thing. But yeah, those are my next steps.
Just before we went on air, we were just having a bit of a chin wag, a little bit of a catch up, and you were telling me that you have this watch thing. Is it a Garmin watch that and you get ticks when you achieve things or something?
Yeah, so I have a Garmin watch that monitors all my fitness activities, and the dopamine that I get, I'm very much a rewards based person. So if something's going to give me a reward at the end of an activity, I'll be much more motivated to do it. See, it's an ADHD hack that I have. So my watch gives me feedback. So every time I hit 10,000 steps, it gives me a little, yay, you did it. And then in the morning, when I wake up, it says, like, gives me a little inspirational message, like, believe in yourself, or today is going to be a great day, that sort of thing. Or when I go for a run, like, I get the little activity pop up on the app, and then a little tick on the bottom of the day to say that I've accomplished something that day. Like, it's all very intricate, and I just love the dopamine that I get from being rewarded for doing something that most people would find simple, but I find really hard.
Yeah, I feel you with that, with the ADHD stuff. The littlest things are the hugest things for us. Those ticks, see, that's such, what I was saying before too, was that that's such an organic way of getting dopamine. It's not manufactured like taking a drug or doom scrolling Facebook. I don't know. It feels to me like when you get dopamine from those really healthy sort of avenues, it just hits so much better. So the ticks, more ticks, that's what we want. That's what we want moving forward.
Absolutely.
And what about medications moving forward? Was any changes with your meds?
No, not really. So I got added a PRN recently, which helps with any distress that I get. So that's been really helpful. But yeah, no, I'm on 4 different medications, and they all do a really good job and keep me alive, and I'm very grateful for them and privileged to have, because some people can't afford healthcare to be able to get on medications to save their lives. So I'm very, very grateful.
That's amazing. It's all amazing. You're amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. There's so much to your story. Like, I know there's bits that we glossed over. Don't worry, everybody. I know you are all thinking we want more, Holly. We want more. There will be more coming, as long as Holly wants to, of course. No pressure. But there is so much depth to your story that I'd love to hear more, and hopefully down the track we will do just that. But I'll tell you what, that was amazing. You're amazing. Such an inspiration. And, I'll say it again. Like, I'm just so glad we're friends. I'm so glad we met, off Facebook. We could have been anybody, and it could have, we could have hated each other. But in the end, we've got this amazing friendship, and I'm so privileged to have you in my life, and I'm so privileged and honored to have you on the show. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It's unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. All right. That's it. I think that's it.
We did it.
We did it.